Welcome back to Space Old Guitars. Today we're going to attempt to bind the edges of this fretboard. And my binding here is this thick cream binding, and I'm going to bind all the way around except for the nut side, of course. So the first thing we're going to do is to find something to place it up against. We're going to put paper down because we are going to use glue. Place it up against so that we can clamp it down and have it clamped all the way around. Now I know some people, they want to tape it in place and then glue. I like to glue first and then clamp it in. Yeah, look at that contrast, it's going to look beautiful. And then, so we're going to, I don't know if you can see, we're going to cut the binding bit off, and on this side, and then we're going to do that one all the way at the end. As you can see, I've cut the end off, so this is the 24th fret, so no longer do we have the overhang, and this is going to be our final shape of the fingerboard. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is to place something that we can glue it up against. So we're going to put it right on the edge and then push it towards something that will be our guide here. So I'm going to go find that and we'll be back. Okay, welcome back. So what I've done is taken a piece of fiber board. This is something that we use in bathrooms in Norway. This is something I have spare. It's very stiff, it's good quality, and this is a very smooth surface. And I've taken this little slither of it, screwed it down, so that'll be the up against part. And I have this one, we'll place against that and screw it in, basically. So we're going to leave it screwed in. But before we get that far, I'm going to mask this off because we don't want the binding to get glued stuck to this board and potentially damage the fingerboard. Make sure you get it very smooth. And this section as well. I've never done it like this before, but now the clamps are being used for the neck and the head stock joint. So, but what I basically did, I put the tape so that there's no opening in the edges. But I'm going to go get an easier tape. So that it really comes off easy. This is the Transferite Ultra super low tack tape bought at Stumac. So I'm going to tape the bottom. I'm going to mark that up so that we know we have tape underneath any glue squeeze out. I'm going to mark up where the edges go. So I'm just going to cover this line with tape now. And again, this is a super low tack tape. Yeah, and then the edge, tape this edge as well. And then we're gonna get down to business very soon. Keep in mind this is very low tack, so it doesn't really stick to anything. But this is just to keep the keep the glue from getting stuck to this board itself. This might not actually work. It's so low tech. I'll have to use another piece of tape because I don't want the tape to come off in the gluing process either. So there we go. Make sure it's smooth as possible, although it will compress, so it's not really that critical. But now we're gonna get our glue out and then start cutting the binding. So I'm gonna get pliers for that. Since we're not doing the joint now, I'm not going to worry about cutting the joints in a 45-degree angle. I'm just going to have them straight and then cut them at once the body side is getting done. Then we're going to try to get the angles right. But then at that point the edges will be glued in nicely. And also at this point we don't need to heat the binding in any way possible. So this is how it's going to look once it's done. And that looks very good. I'm going to have to remember to push the fingerboard down as well, so we don't want that coming up and then having the binding not following the fingerboard. So I may have to, I'm going to do that as well. I'm going to make wedges so that I can wedge the fingerboard down in the gluing process. And we're going to do one side at a time because I don't want to mess up and then having a bubble or something at for example in the middle of the fingerboard. I don't want the binding to go like this. So okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to sand this very lightly with a pretty low grit sandpaper, just so we know that the glue will stick. You don't need a lot, just need some small scratches in it. And I'm going to do both sides. We will scrape the edges anyway once we transfer it onto the neck. So I'm just going to do this now. And then sort of slightly scorch the fingerboard as well. Not scorched, but sort of sand it so that we have a nice edge to it. Okay. I'm gonna place that like that. And then we're gonna put glue onto the binding itself. I'm gonna get screws ready. Need the screws and the wedges. Don't need the wedges. Might not need wedges actually, but maybe just a long piece of steel. I'll just use the beam. That'll do fine. Okay. This is Tight Bond super glue. It's wood adhesive. I'm gonna put gloves on because I'm terrible at getting glue on my fingers. And as I said, I'm going to do this in 2 steps because that decreases the chances of messing up. I'm just going to put a small dab of glue along because we will get squeezed out from this as well. And just go back and forth trying to get glue all over. You don't need a lot, but you do need glue on the entire edge, not the height of the, not necessarily the height of the binding, but the entire length. Put it like this. Now, see here. And there we go. So squeeze out on top of the fingerboard. It's nothing to worry about because we are going to sand it down. So now I'm going to screw this in place. On this side, so I got my gloves, my gloves caught in the screw, but that's terrible. So now making sure everything is down and tight. Put this in, put a little clamp. Okay, so the first one is set. We're going to do the next one now. Same with that, it's been roughly sanded. And just gonna place this here. Now, don't attempt to use, if you do it this way, don't attempt to use the same screw holes. You need to make new ones because they might try to jump forward and squeeze everything out. So I'm just going to prepare these in advance this time, so that it's just a matter of putting them in. Same. Place glue on the binding. And with the same, there will be a squeeze out, but just make sure to cover the entire length of the binding, so that you don't have any bubbles or sections without glue on the fingerboard, on the binding to the fingerboard. Okay, forgot my gloves this time. Alright, there we go. Pushing this in place and screwing it in. Okay, now I'm going to use this little wedge make sure the binding is all the way down. Making sure the fingerboard is all the way down. And then squeezing it in place. And by the looks of it, we've done all right. So I'm just gonna hold this down for a little while. I'm not gonna bother with wedges and stuff because it only takes a minute or so for the glue to set. Okay, so this is what the fingerboard looks like now. It's all dried and this section is in. As you can see, I didn't do anything fancy with the joints. Just let the sides go past and this in between. Now to get this stuck, I used to, or to sort of clamp it down, I just took pieces of tape around, making sure that the back was also without gaps. So now you need to check the underside of your fingerboard for any gaps or obtrusions. As you can see, I have a little bit of glue here. The rest looks good. And then start scraping down or shaving down the binding. Personally, I like to use a scraper because it is it's accurate and it won't. If you use like a chisel or a gouge, it can go in and sort of tear out. So I'm going to do that now. And now, in these corners, where there's a real, what's the problem getting these two, because you really want to go along with the binding. I go over to filing. Also, there's quite a bit of glue here. Okay, so I'm quite happy. I'm going to do a little bit more on the lighter string side. Okay, so I'm quite happy with this. Next step for this fretboard would be the shaping. But before that, we are going to see how it lines up with the bridge. But we're going to mark out the all the string slots. Now, obviously this will be done on the bridge. So in terms of scale and intonation, this will be moved out just a little bit, but for now we're just going to see how it fits with the bridge and the placement of the neck. So we're going to use a string spacing rule, which is this genius design that allows you to have the same spacing between the strings instead of an accurate spacing between the middle of the strings. So as you can see, you find two, either the lower ones or the upper ones, or right or left, or however you want to see it. As long as you find two that align with the outside strings. These are 3 millimeters or 1/8 of an inch in from the sides. And you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the 6th. So now we're going to mark those up. I'm just going to use this. And we'll see how that will align with the bridge. And I'm just going to sharpen this with the scraper just quickly. Now, I don't use finished bridges because, no, sorry, nuts, because that will sort of hinder me in making a guitar. Then I'm constrained to the bridge size, sorry, nut size. So 3mm in there, 3mm in, that's there, yeah. So we have this line, and we need to make sure that these will fit not only with the bridge but also with the neck. You don't want the, if I'm overdoing it, you don't want the angle to go outside of the bridge neck or inside. You want it to stay sort of straight. No, actually, you want it perfectly straight. So this will basically be 3mm the entire way. So we're going to mark down here as well. And so if we can draw a straight line this way and then this way through the body and to where the bridge is. So we're going to tape up once more and use the straight edge a couple of times. We'll do the either 9th, between the 9th and the 12th fret somewhere. That's, I believe 9th is the dead center of the neck, and then at the very end. Now, taking into account that the binding has not been thicknessed in any way, it's just there. So, as I said, this isn't rocket science at the moment, but it's just to see if everything aligns the way that it should. I'm using the fret at the bottom as a guide. I didn't do that on this side, so I'll do that again. And then on this side, 23rd or the 24th doesn't really matter. It should be the same anyway. So now we're going to use a straight edge to see that all these align. So if I get my straight edge here, fingers crossed, you can see that the fingerboard, even with the binding, is straight, and that's straight, and it should be, because in the last episode we sanded it straight, but it might warp. So let's see, that's straight. As I want it to be, I'm going to draw up the center line again. I want the edge of the neck to just not touch the neck humbucker. So I'm going to find that center line and mark that up there. It's a little high. There. It's good enough. And then can you see that there's just some space between where the humbucker is and where the neck is? So now, because we can't trust this one point on the center line alone, we have to align it with the rest, otherwise you'll risk having a crooked neck. As you can see, I was quite off. So I'm just going to align this straight edge with the center line. And then sort of rock it till it's just, that's a bit much. There we go. Now the neck is dead straight. So now we're going to draw around that. And then we're going to sort of clamp it down so that we can see if the, as you can see, my fingerboard is a little bit crooked. Can you see that? That it sort of slides towards the humbucker. So this is going to get shaved down. I probably should have checked that before. So now the moment of truth. Here are where the strings go. So as long as the outermost fit, then we're good to go. So that fits. I don't know if you can see that because of the angle. But what I'm trying to make is this bottom string alignment go straight to that the lowermost hole for the strings. And that is dead straight. I'm gonna have to move my fingers so we can check the top. The top isn't as critical, to be honest, because nobody plays the 24th fret at the top. And that is dead straight as well. So we've done a good thing here. Now, let's double check from the 12th fret to the bridge to see if that measurement is still correct, or if I have to move the neck or the bridge, because I can move either one quite easily. So that's 31.8, and then we're going to go 0 in on that, and that's 32 point something. So I'm going to have to move the bridge a little bit closer because I cannot move the neck more in. So 32 point something. Was this 31.8? I don't know where I measured from. There we go. 31.8, yeah. So this should go forward as 32.4. So we need to go forward a couple of millimeters. But that's it. So 32.4 to make it easy. Let's put it down like this. 32.4. There. I'm going to move it forward to 31.8, which is there. And it's as easy as that to just double check that you have your scale in place. Because when I placed the fingerboard before, I had that large slab. You can see the mark here from the previous one. So it's hard to determine where the 24th fret would be. But now we can see we want it just shy of the humbucker, the neck humbucker. So this is where the new one is. And then we're going to measure this again with the bridge. So this is where we want the saddles to be. So I'm going to draw this up again. Should be long enough. And with a 6-string bridge, you just go straight between the D and the G string. That's where, you know, your center is. So now the holes that we marked earlier should be moved just as far forward as this scale line. Now, obviously I'm not going to drill from these because we're going to do everything again once we have the neck in place. So as you can see, yeah. So these ones are off. These are the old ones, these are the new ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 strings and 3 screw holes. As you can see, the screw hole is straight on the center line. So that was that. Now we're going to wait for the neck to be done gluing, and then the next process will be to route the neck and then make a template for the neck pocket. So since I'm showing you this and I'm not building a straight standard guitar that I have a template for, as you could see by me shaping the body by eye and just sort of drawing it a little, I'm going to make a new template for it. Well, not a template per se, but I'm going to make a routing jig where I know it will fit the neck. So once the neck is attached to the fingerboard is attached to the neck and we have routed it, we can place pieces of wood here. These curves that you see on each side will come naturally from the router bit, since the router bit won't be able to do a perfectly straight 90 degree off. And we're going to attempt to match that rounding on the neck after. So it's a bit back and forth when you're doing it like this without a template. If you buy a template off of eBay or something, then, I mean, if you buy a good set, then you'll be able to route everything and it'll just fit. But you will still have to adjust the fingerboard back and forth, or the bridge back and forth, to make everything fit. So I think that's it for now. The next thing we'll do will be to radius the fingerboard and route the neck, the cavities for truss rod and carbon fiber support rods. Alright, check back.